Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, the chemistry of love can be unexpectedly rich, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals who pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do because you're listening. So please, keep on listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating in your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere, places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the X, or Twitter, as it were, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Letterboxd. There's too many, I lose track, but we're in the seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, because while this is an audio-only experience, please come over to In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because you know what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. We would really, really appreciate it. On this very special episode, we got a good one. It is in theaters this coming Friday from writer-director Pete Ohs. It is Erupcja, and it's the story of a Polish florist and a British tourist in this charming postcard of sapphic synchronicity and love and chemistry and all that fun stuff that comes in the movies. And Erupcja, this movie, it really does play like almost French New Wave. There's almost, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say breathless because that's a heady comparison, but there's a lot going on. It is starring the one and only Charlie XCX, and honestly, a really good performance, and it really does feel like she's kind of chasing her Gene Seberg moment kind of here, and she does a really fantastic job in this film. But we had the chance to sit down with the one and only Pete Ohs to talk about sort of the origins of this film, working with Charlie, the nature of it all, his use of camera, and all that other stuff, and plus, I guess the brevity of it all, because Pete gets to the point. He's an indie filmmaker. He shoots in 2 weeks. He's not giving us 3-hour opuses. This is a 71-minute movie, and it's a gripping 71 minutes. It's incredibly well done. You're hooked in for minute one, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's definitely one of my favorites of the week. Like I said, Charlie XCX is starring, some fantastic turns from Lena Gora, a few other people. It is really a quality piece of indie cinema, and we want to go check it out. Go check out Erupcja in theaters this coming Friday here in Toronto and in various locations across Canada. But first, enjoy our talk with the one and only writer-director Pete Ohs, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one, and we'll talk to you soon. Pete, I don't remember, but we talked a few years back on Jessica, so I mean, I'm just happy to connect with you again about this, man, because I absolutely loved it.
Amazing.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Great to talk to you again.
Absolutely, man. Now, I mean, I guess walk me through the origins of it all on your end and connecting with Charlie and developing the story, because I mean, there's so many sort of cinematic elements going on here that I'm dying to talk to you about. Just I was overloaded. I loved it.
Mm. I had moved to Warsaw at the end of 2023 for romantic reasons. So I was living there. I was living in Poland, and I was falling in love in Warsaw. I was falling in love with Warsaw, and so I really wanted to make a movie there. Shortly thereafter, I was in New York for we were hanging out with Jeremy O'Harris, who's a collaborator I had made 2 movies with prior, in the previous year. And we were at a bar in his neighborhood at 3 a.m. and Charlie walked into the bar, and Jeremy went over to her and said hi and brought her over to our table, and we all started talking about movies and started getting excited about making something together. And at the end of that night, she said, "I'm gonna look you up and see what your films are like, and maybe I'll send you a message." And the next morning, she was following me on Instagram, and I had a DM. And we started talking about the ideas for this movie. And like so many different kind of coincidences like that. were how we arrived at the themes and the story of it, which I think makes sense given what the movie ended up being.
Right.
We happened like another conversation around that same time was with a guy who had lived in Warsaw and who had been trapped there for a month because of the volcano in Iceland that had erupted and in 2010. And I heard that and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. But simultaneously, I had been living in Iceland in 2010. And so the fact that this guy had this experience and I also my life was also connected to it in some way gave it more significance for me, and that made me excited to fold that into the movie as well. So then bringing Lena Gora being this actress in Poland who I had met happenstance through a film festival, and then Will Madden, of course, being one of my favorite recurring collaborators, became the four people I would make a movie with, and then through conversations with them, we arrived at this story about exploring romance and complicated relationships and whether or not love always prevails. And we made the movie together with the same process that we made Jessica.
Well, I love that, man. I mean, it's this idea of these emotional eruptions that kind of happen in our lives that you just have to sort of navigate is so fascinating. And I mean, something I've always appreciated about you is because you shot this as well.
Mm,
And I mean, can you talk a little bit about, I guess, specifically sort of the visual aesthetic that you wanted? Because I mean, there are some shots, I mean, on the escalator in the subway, and I mean, even
mm,
something as simplistic as the POV shot on the rolling luggage, man, which I absolutely fucking loved. It got me
mm.
totally in the moment. Like, talk to me a little bit about sort of creating a visual feel for the film.
I work very intuitively. It's a really fun, present, alive way to create. I encourage my collaborators to get into that space too, where it's just about being aware and open and receive from the world. And I also try to make movies in a relatively practical way, where I'm very conscious, almost like with a producer mind, of the logistics that are involved. So on this movie, the previous movies I had been making, I would call house movies, where it all takes place in and around essentially one location.
Right.
This movie was going to be a city movie. We were going to be going all over the city. We're going to be getting on and off of trams, going up and down escalators, and I just knew logistically, physically, it's going to be easier for me, the cinematographer, if it's handheld, if I'm not also having to carry around a tripod.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I had been living in Warsaw and really drawn to all this architecture, these buildings that were built during communism, which is the 70s. And so then I'm also like feeling like I want to make a movie that almost takes place in the 70s, and it feels like the movies of the 70s. So then that's now influencing how I'm shooting, how I'm framing, how I'm seeing the world. And then as I move, just because I shot lots of things, as I am moving through the space, I'm always looking for interesting perspectives, a place to put the camera that you normally wouldn't.
Mhm.
As we move through our lives, we're always seeing the world just through our eyeballs
Right, of course, yeah.
at like, whatever, at 5, 6 feet tall, however tall we are, like that's just how we are always seeing things. And a tip I received from a mentor really early on was just like put the camera somewhere else, put it on the ground, put it somewhere like your eyeballs don't normally go. And so things like putting the camera on the railing of the escalator unlocks something, putting it on the handle of the suitcase is there's just something exciting about that of suddenly putting the audience in a place they're not normally seeing the world from.
Love that. Love that. Now, I mean, this is a bit of a heady sort of heady comparison, but bear with me. It really does
Hmm.
feel like Charlie is having a almost kind of her Gene Seberg moment here in sort of
Hmm.
developing this character and really giving us something that is so simplistic but still so dynamic all at the same time. And I think you can say that about all the characters in this film.
Hmm.
Can you talk to me a little bit about wanting to give this story an exciting but still kind of grounded element to it?
Yeah, I mean, I like when movies don't take place in reality. I'm kind
Yeah,
of always wanting there to be some fantastical element to it. I like when it feels like magic um is real.
yeah,
Like I want there to be ghosts.
of course, yeah,
Um
yeah,
and so when we were starting to make this movie, even in my mind, I wanted it to be real that they made volcanoes erupt. I wanted this to be like very magical realism. Um and and like that's where like my mind started as were starting to film, starting to move through this. I was very much believing them, and then as we just started to make the movie and as it kind of came down to earth and we started to engage with these characters and their emotions and what they were actually going through, um, I got grounded. I got brought back to reality. That's sort of like what the experience of romanticizing a place is. You think it's going to be something and then you get there and then it is what it is. And very often it's not what you had anticipated or expected. And then it wasn't until halfway through the shoot that I finally Googled. Because also when we were shooting, Etna did erupt, and that made me feel all the more magical. It made all of us feel all the more. We were experiencing the world the way these characters were. And then finally, during the second half of the shoot, I Googled volcanic eruptions per year, and I learned that there's 1,500 volcanoes on Earth, and 50 to 70 of them erupt every year, and that's it. It just means that you know the magic you feel might partially also be projection. And I think that is very much connected to the ground. It's I think that's connected to why it kept feeling right to put these characters on the floor. How often people are sitting on the floor, how often they're touching the
Yeah.
concrete of like they're sitting on concrete. There is something about their like their emotions being up in the sky, but their feet being on the ground that are the themes being explored with the film.
Well, I mean, even Rob kind of says that sort of towards the end. And I mean, if you had had this sort of big montage of Rob running around Poland looking for Bethany, it would have been a completely different movie and it wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
worked.
Mm-hmm.
Talk, like, can you sort of, I mean, I guess, and I'm trying to find the right way to word this because it's one of those things where it really does feel like, and I mean, I hate to use comparisons, but I mean, there's French New Wave, there's Kuromasaki, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of different stuff going on in this movie. I mean, this does feel very much like your European moment. I mean,
Mm.
obviously, you're very influenced by your surroundings. I mean, can you talk a little bit about, I guess, just sort of, I guess, the cinema of that comes out of you in sort of the location that you're in and the story that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched lots of movies. I've absorbed all these things. I've absorbed all these French New Wave films. I've enjoyed them. When I'm making something I don't actively reference,
Right.
and some people do, and I think it's great that they do that. That's part of their process. For me, I'm often curious about. I'm like, I want to understand how we got here,
Yeah.
and what I think is fascinating is how many people have told me how much this film feels like the Polish New Wave cinemas of like Kieślowski and of the movies that were made in the 70s there,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen them. And so I'm like, I think what I did is I went to the place where they did it. I responded to the same light that they responded to, the same textures and air and buildings and energy and spirit. And then what's happens is you make something that feels like that. Like that's the equation. It's like you don't have to fake it. You just have to go and actually do what they did, and you'll come out with a similar product.
Well, and even the idea of the narration, which gives it almost this absurdist quality to it all. I mean, how big was that for you to sort of again give us something like you said on the ground, but still very off kilter?
That the voiceover came really late in the process. Um, in post-production, I'm editing and I'm finding the movie. This is what every movie does. And I'm feeling good about lots of things, but I'm also feeling like there's a void. And it wasn't until a friend, Albert Burney, who's directed Obex, this other film I had worked on, that he said, "What about a voiceover like Jules and Jim?" And so we loaded up Criterion and we watched like the first minute of it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like that. That is cool." And so I just used Polish Google Translate to put like a temp voice in there,
Love
and
it, love it.
it felt really cool and very interesting, and it had this kind of like cool detached quality, which was similar to Jules and Jim. And then when I shared that with our like Polish collaborators, our Polish cultural consultant, I learned that there's this thing in Poland called a lector, which is what they use essentially when they do dubs. It's when there's a film that's not in Polish, instead of having a bunch of different actors perform the different characters, they just have this one like dry man, male voice who will just say all the lines, and you hear that, and beneath you hear the like he just says it over top of the movie, of the audio of the actual film. And that felt really exciting how this idea that I'd stumbled upon through French New Wave also was connected to the culture of Poland. And ultimately what I was trying to do, and my big experiment was what happens if I make a Polish film? What happens if
Yeah,
I make a foreign film? What happens if I make a film in a language that I don't speak? What gets lost in translation? Gets found in translation? And so this voiceover that felt both connected to the cinema, French New Wave, it also felt connected to like the Polish culture, also was this way that I was able to inject my sense of humor. It was able for me to communicate to the audience um, more about these characters, more about this world, but also how to receive it. That 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 like not to take things that we are not taking things too seriously.
yeah.
That we are not like drinking the Kool-Aid in the way that in the way that like these characters might be about their own self-importance. That we, the film, are not also saying we think this is the most self-important film as well. That we are observing these characters with some objectivity and some and like a grain of salt and a sense of humor.
But I mean, it is that magic of that idea of lost in translation because, again, it's one of those things where even in watching it, I was like, I was invested, but I knew that I had to hold back like 3% just because
Yeah.
I kind of knew like there was going to be a disconnect due to language, due to other things going on. It allowed me to sort of enjoy it more, I think.
Mm, that's great.
And I mean, it's just one of those dynamics that I mean, I love. And I mean, obviously, another thing about making films like this, collaborators obviously are so important. And I mean, even in watching it, I felt like, you're going to work with Lena again. You're going to work with Charlie again.
Mm,
I could kind of feel that just sort of coming off the screen. And I mean, for you as a filmmaker, is it more about sort of climbing new mountains and finding new hurdles, or is it about sort of finding sort of those people that you sort of have that kismet, sort of that connection with?
mm. I mean, the reason I make movies is because it's fun to get together with friends and make movies. It's not even about the actual movie, it's about the
Right,
process.
right, 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 right.
And it's such a beautiful activity where you get to connect and you get to problem solve and you get to put yourself in other people's shoes. And so to find people that you do get along with, to get that you work so closely with, that you get to know so well, is very much the point for me. And when you make friends, you want to hang out with them again. And so these people that I've had the joy of making something with, I I want to make another movie simply for the excuse to get to hang out again.
For sure, for sure. No, I mean, I gotta ask because I have something else I've always appreciated is, I mean, this Jessica, they're shorter, they're to the point.
Mm.
They're not making, I can imagine sort of the more you get on, the more access you may get, or a little bit of money. I
Mm.
mean, I know this wasn't big budget, but still, you had a little bit more money.
Hmm.
What attracts you to sort of getting to the point? I guess. I mean, I can imagine you could have sort of, there might have been the temptation to sort of make a big, sort of a 2.5 hour love story, but this
Mm.
wouldn't work. It wouldn't work.
I
You need
know.
to be sort of that lean and mean 70 odd minutes.
Yeah. Um, I arrive at that I think in a couple different ways. Um I like simplifying just generally in life.
Right.
I like trying to get things down to the essentials. I think it's part of like my desire to understand, like what's the base level, what is the foundation of these what like peel back all the layers to get to the core of the idea or the
Yeah,
core of the problem or the core of the experience. Um, and so I think that is also one of the things that lends me to like simplifying stuff. And then the re other reason the movies are short is because I like making movies and I always am trying to set up a situation where there's no way that like it's easy for the movie to come into existence.
right, exactly.
And and so I am asking for only 2 weeks of these actors' time. I'm asking them to come to a place to be open-minded, to engage, but for only 2 weeks. And generally, that's a short enough time that that most anyone can make it work. Even if they're the most busy international pop star in the world, they can carve out 2 weeks. If somebody is working in catering, they have a server job at a restaurant, they can also ask off for 2 weeks and be able to come back to their job without losing it. So like I like that it makes it accessible for anyone. But what that also means is we only have 2 weeks. And the way that I work is I shoot 3 scenes a day. We're shooting them in order. and we're going to end up with 12 shooting days. On average, scenes will be 2 minutes long. So if you're shooting 3 scenes a day, that's 6 minutes of movie.
Right.
And so if you're shooting for 12 days, that's going to be a 72-minute movie.
Love
And
it.
that's what Erupcia is, which is long enough to be a feature film, and then also short enough to like be an experience that most like all my collaborators can easily fit into their schedules. And so it just for me is that perfect balance of the right amount, not too much, not being indulgent, um, and hopefully giving an audience like a quick experience, and then encouraging them hopefully to go back outside, to return to their lives, to keep on living. I'm not trying to trap people for hours on end in my thoughts and feelings. I really want them to go out and experience things for themselves.
Well, amen to that, man. But I mean, at the same time, I love Erupcia, and I mean, it's one of these things that and I love that idea of you bringing up the 2 weeks because
Mm.
and that speaks to sort of the shorter run time too, because anyone can really find the time to give up 70, 80 minutes to watch something a little different. They can
Mm-hmm.
give up 2 weeks to collaborate on something a little different. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful spot to be in, man. But honestly, again, congrats on this and thank you for the insight and the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David. Good talking with you again.
Good talking with you again. See you again soon, Pete.
Cool. See you soon.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.